Upset alert. My concern meter for a lot of these favorites is, to varying degrees, starting to peak a little bit. I had a buddy, just as we went on air, he texted me and said, how is Illinois such a big underdog against Penn State? Well, let's start with that game. Illinois plays Penn State tomorrow. What is the official language we have to use here? We can't call it a whiteout because through some insane agreement that I was just made aware of today, Penn State can only officially use the term whiteout once per year, and somehow the NHL is involved. Don't even get me started on it. So Jesse tells me this is not a whiteout, but then he winks at me and he says, it will have whiteout energy. Just win the game. That's really all that matters. You are about a 17.5-point favorite at FanDuel right now. All right, so last year, Illinois quarterback Luke Altmaier, horrific in this game. 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. They lost 30-13. Now this year, that was bad Luke. This year we got good Luke. And he's 71% on completion so far this year, 10 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So Illinois actually +7 turnover margin so far this year. If we get that kind of game, certainly Penn State's not covering this. That begs the question, do we get this kind of game? I feel halfway decent about Penn State. I don't feel wonderful about it. I do have it about a 6.5 on the concern scale, 1 to 10 on the upset alert meter. Because I keep watching Illinois and Brett Bielema, and I keep saying that may not be the best team in the country. In fact, I'll go as far as to say on this show tonight, Illinois is not the number 1 team in the country. But they're hard to beat. And the thing about teams that are hard to beat is you can't get margin on them, or it's hard to get margin on them. So 17.5, not that this is a covers or not segment. We do that later. We'll just say Penn State to lose outright. Well, I don't expect it, but it's a 6.5 just because I respect Brett that much. Next up, this is one I'm low on, candidly. Ohio State, I believe, is on the road, actually. I believe they're on the road at Michigan State. So this one is their first trip out on the road. We all know how scary that is, going on the road for the first time. They're getting 1 or 2 wide receivers back at Michigan State, so there's that. And, of course, like I said, Ohio State's on the road for the first time. And Aiden Childs, when he's at his best, can be really dangerous at quarterback, and Ohio State's untested. And then I had one more bullet point here, and it is 2 letters, 1 word, and it just says N-O, and then there's an underscore. This is not happening. I'm not concerned about this. And if you want to call this bulletin board material, feel free to use it in East Lansing. You're not beating Ohio State. So this, did you hear the Jersey accent? You're not beating them. I've never even been to New Jersey. I've never flown out of Newark, right? No, I haven't. And I would have no other reason to be there because Lance has never invited me to his house. Anyway, I grew up in rural Georgia, but whether you're from there or Hoboken, Ohio State's not beating or not losing to Michigan State. So this is a 2 on the upset alert scale. I'm not concerned about it. I'd be stunned if it happened. Next up, I have concerns. South Alabama is going to LSU, and on the surface, this point spread is about what the Ohio State-Michigan State line is. It's within a couple of points of it. So LSU's favored by a little over 3 touchdowns at home against South Alabama. I know plenty of LSU fans. I know plenty of folks associated with that program. You may look at this from the outside, and you may say, uh-oh, I hope LSU's not overlooking South Alabama. They're not. They're not. No one feels comfortable about this game down there. Nobody. So what's the upset alert panic meter at? A 6. A 6, because this could happen. This could happen. Now, let me tell you what should happen. South Alabama's corners should get toasted by LSU, because that's where the glaring mismatch is. Notice I said should. I don't know if it's going to happen. Here's what I do know. South Alabama's running it for 236 per game, and I watched South Carolina do just about that on LSU a couple of weeks ago. And so if that game starts to tilt that way, you just lost Harold Perkins for the season, for whatever that's worth in this game. I just say it because it happened. And the game starts to tilt. You know, if Alabama's in there, you know you're getting everything LSU has. If South Alabama's in there and they're running the ball on you and it's a perceived inferior opponent, you have been in a stadium before probably where you're just watching something that goes from mildly problematic to genuinely frustrating to alarming, and it's all that the opponent is running the ball on you, and they keep doing it. And then for whatever reason, Nuss is overthrowing receivers even though they're open. If that happens, if you're -2 in the turnover battle, that's all it takes. I've got a 6. I am concerned here. I need LSU to come through. I really need them to put a complete game together. I mean, UCLA hung with them last week. They won, but UCLA hung with them. So it's a 6, a solid 6 there, just like Pam in New York City. She's an 8 in Scranton. She's a 6 in the city. Well, this concerns me. It's a 6 on the upset alert scale. Oklahoma State at Kansas State. Now, this is where the upset alert scale is going to make no sense to the casual, because the casual looks at this and says, well, if a 21.5-point dog has him concerned at a 6 on the 1 to 10 scale, then certainly a 5.5-point dog has him rattled. No, they don't. I've got the same concern on this game. It's a 6, and I'm going to tell you why. Because Kansas State's one of my best bets of the week. I laid the 5.5 earlier in the week. It's on the Ramen Noodle Express. Best bets. We're seeing the board really well. And look, Alan Bowman, I will admit this. He got benched briefly, the Oklahoma State quarterback. He got benched briefly in his last game. He does have somewhere in his pocket, you felt around in there for a key or a spare tic-tac before. Well, when Alan Bowman reaches in his pocket, there is a game in there where it's 3 touchdowns, no picks, about 45 rushing, and he throws for 338, and he is player of the game. That's in there somewhere. Of course, him getting benched again is also in there. You reach in that pocket, you better be careful. Immunity. So here's what I think. What I think is Kansas State is 15th in rush yards per game, and Oklahoma State's defense is 102nd stopping it. I think they will control this game on the ground. I think it'll feel a little bit like the Arizona game that Kansas State played a couple of weeks ago. Who knows? Maybe Alan Bowman shuts me up. Maybe Ali G, maybe he finds explosive runs, which he hasn't found all year. A lot of maybes there. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Kansas State, big bounce back week, and I am not overly concerned. Oh, by the way, the last time this game was played in this building, I should remember it because I was there. The line was 3, and the final, check me on this, but it was something like 49-0. It was the worst stop of our tour through no fault of Kansas State. People were great. It's just it was the Sarah McLachlan special, and we saw it in person. That rarely happens. Next up, Kentucky's at Ole Miss, and no one cares, but maybe you should care. Ole Miss is laying 17.5 at FanDuel right now. How concerned are we here? On the surface, no one is, because Kentucky can't throw the ball, or so we think. I think it along with you. And Ole Miss has shown no reason for you to doubt them. They've played inferior opponents, and they've beat up on all of them exactly how a good to great team should do. So, is it fair that maybe if you doubted Ole Miss, you could still have doubts? Sure. But I don't know any reason to doubt them if you didn't already. And now we finally get an opponent in here that the one thing they can do is they can match them a little more physically. None of these other teams, Middle Tennessee, Wake, Georgia Southern, no one's had the caliber of athlete or close to it that Ole Miss has. Kentucky doesn't match Ole Miss athlete for athlete. They can compete. They just did with Georgia a couple of weeks ago. So they can compete at least. And they're coming in here, and we know they can't throw it. And it probably, look, even if they are the first team that can be physical with them, what do they do? Like if Ole Miss can't score early, what response does Kentucky have? If it's something we haven't seen so far this year, they got 152 pass yards per game. If they're at that mark at the half, well then great. But I'm going to have to see it. So if they can follow the Michigan script, for example, if Kentucky can do to Ole Miss what Michigan did to USC last week and just run it, even then you kind of got to thread the needle because it's just low margin for error style of play. But if they can do that, great. I am not totally sure it's there for 4 quarters, so this is only a 5 on the concern scale for me. Lastly, let's go to Orlando. I didn't know Big Noon Kickoff was at this game. Did not know that. So furthest south we will have seen Brady Quinn and Matt Leinart and the boys in quite a while. This is a 3 for me. So here's the scene. Colorado is going to Central Florida. Colorado's off that miracle win they had last week, and now they're going to UCF. And Shedeur gives you a shot in these games, and UCF's pass D has been very vulnerable. We saw it. We saw it up close because we had an under that they couldn't protect a couple of weeks ago. We did rebound. We did rebuild. UCF, number 5 run offense in the country. Colorado's 83rd trying to stop it. So kind of similar to what we think Kansas State will do and just run. The difference is Kansas State can shut you down defensively. I don't know that UCF can. So if we're talking about UCF winning and covering, I'd be terrified of the back door. However, we're talking about the outright upset. And I really think UCF's going to have a great night here, great day, whatever time the kickoff is. So I've only got about a 3 or a 4 on the upset alert concern meter, which is weird. It's weird, but it's a unique spot as well. You win the way they did last week, and you got to fly all the way across the country, and you face a team that can run it really well. That's a tough out. It is a game that is ripe for needing to throw the ball a lot, and somehow one of the worst secondaries in the country comes up with picks because you have to take too many risks, and then they run the ball and they take possessions away, and that's the kind of game I think it'll be. So I think UCF wins. Maybe they'll cover, but I don't have concern about them losing it outright.